Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken, where we are going to continue to share life experiences. And today we have Elizabeth Somboun joining us today, and she's going to tell you a little bit. You think sex trafficking? Yes, it is real, and she's going to tell you how real it is. Elizabeth, thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken. And hey, we're in Canada.
We are in Canada. That is so exciting. That is so amazing. Yes. So I'll just tell you, like, I'll give you kind of the, I don't know, maybe the cliff notes of like what happened. So I was sexually trafficked at 3. I was born out of rape and incest. At the age of four and a half, my mom dropped me and my biological mom off at an adoption agency. We got adopted by the same family. I had a lot of trauma. My brother was a little bit younger, like he was only 2, so the trauma wasn't so severe, but he had some mental delays due to physical abuse. So where brain was supposed to be, bone had replaced it due to the significant amount of head trauma that he had from abuse. And they had their own biological child when I was in grade 2, second grade for Americans. And then, I don't know, they just decided that because I wasn't attaching, they were going to put me back up for adoption. So they called the adoption agency and said, we don't want her anymore, and returned me back to the agency. They were trying to get like the $10,000 refunded, and the agency was like, nope, we're not doing that, but we will pay for her ticket. I was made a legal orphan again, went to a group home in San Antonio, Texas, in Bulverde, St. Jude's Home for Children, which actually still exists today. And I then fought an adoption with the Solomons, and they were very fundamentalist. They were homeschoolers. They were into a lot of like patriarchal cult stuff. And then when I was 17, my mom told my dad just to drop me off on the streets of San Antonio, and he kind of refused. They got into a huge argument. I then went into some kid shelters for a period of time, and then I was adopted, well, fostered, not adopted, but fostered by an amazing Mexican mom, Maria, and my amazing foster sister, Joy. And they are like my family now. Well, then I went to Job Corps and got my GED, and then went back to see my biological mom. Went as horribly wrong as it could have gone. And then I met this guy on the internet through a Yahoo chat room. For those of you who are old like me and know about that, he flew over to England, and we got married and had an amazing family. So I thought, turned out that he was kind of into drugs, and my parents illegally kidnapped my 2 children out of that marriage. I moved up to Canada and had a son, and then around the age of 26, I had a mental breakdown, just with a lot of stuff going on. I think it was at age 23, it was confirmed that I had been sexually trafficked by my grandmother. And she actually confirmed that to my editor of my book, Elevators of My Life. And then I got into an abusive relationship that I barely survived. And I just walked out one day, and I was like, don't want to do this anymore. And I met my husband, Brandon, and I studied the Holocaust, the Shoah, I think it's pronounced Shoah, Foundation from Steven Spielberg, who I owe so much of my healing from. And if I ever get to meet him in person, I just want to give him like the biggest hug, because I think he's such an inspiration. So I studied the Holocaust survivor stories on YouTube for about 6 solid months, about 10,000 hours, give or take. And I pulled out like 25 keys that I needed to heal, and started implementing those 25 keys, which I actually have on video on YouTube. And then I healed, and I did surrogacy in 2018. And now I have my own writing business, and I also own a surrogacy agency called AWE Surrogacy. And we just got our first client a couple of months ago. So that's already in progress. And I guess that's essentially my life in a nutshell. Thanks so much.
Well, you got a lot of moving pieces in this story. So we're gonna make this make sense. So
Okay.
At the beginning, when you were initially let me rewind. the structure of your family.
Yes.
You said that you were born out of rape and incest. So what family members, were involved, and how old was your mother?
So it would have been I'm trying to remember like how to word this, because it's not my aunt, but my great aunt, her husband. So my mom's aunt's husband, was the one that had raped her. And she was gonna have an abortion, but she couldn't come up. I think it was like $400 or $600 or something, and she didn't have it. So she was, she really wanted to abort me, but she just didn't have the money. And I think at that time, she really thought that she could do it by herself. But yeah, that's how that situation started. Yeah.
And how old was she?
I believe she was 16, because she had dropped out of school in the 11th grade. So I think she was 16 when she conceived me, and I think she was 17 when she had me. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So the person, so go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the person on my birth certificate is actually, so during all of this horrible stuff that was happening to my mom, my aunt was murdered in cold blood. She was shot to death by her boyfriend. And there was a funeral when I was 6 months in gestation, and he ended up, my deceased aunt's boyfriend hooked up with my mom during the rest of her pregnancy, and his name, Terry Brake, is actually the name that's actually on my real birth certificate.
Oh wow. Sid, do you want to piggyback off of that?
That's fully loaded. Definitely.
A little
bit. Yeah.
It's a lot of twists and turns. Now you did also say that when you all I don't know if it was adopted or fostered, you said you and your mother went into the same family.
So yeah. So my mom, I think, so after I had been trafficked, there was a court order for her to appear before court to basically defend herself against child abuse allegations. But instead of showing up to court, she decided to hightail it to Texas, because I was in Henrietta for that period of time. And then she ended up moving to Texas, and she encountered an agency that is no longer, but it was Adoption Services Associates. And then she just told the agency, like, I don't want Mary anymore, and I don't want her brother anymore. And so they ended up she just ended up putting us up for adoption. The second time, she had tried to do it once before. She apparently was talked out of it from one of her uncle and his wife, who had a cousin. She had a cousin named Darla. So we were staying there, and she just, one day we were sitting on the steps, and she was telling me that I was going to go to a new family, and I was feeling a little bit awkward about it. I actually got adopted actually by the Ruffings on Mother's Day actually, and I remember the racing stripes in the back of the car, and I said to myself, I'm gonna come back one day to like save her, because my whole thing was like I was afraid of leaving her because like I didn't know who was going to like look after her. She didn't tell my biological grandmother that it happened. She had found out, I think, a month or two after it had already happened. Yeah.
So you had mentioned your biological, was it your grandmother or aunt was sex trafficking you?
Oh, so no. Who actually was sex trafficking me was my stepfather. So how this all came about was, I'll go back a little bit. So I wasn't too thrilled that my mom had another baby. Like, my grandmother told me that when I found out that she was having I was having a baby brother, I was like, oh great, he's gonna be a brat. Like that was like the first words that came out of my mouth. Like I was not very happy that there was going to be another little human that I had to share. I was like 2. I was not very happy. But apparently I had serious attitude towards her new husband. And a few weeks before I had been trafficked, I was sitting on the bed and she had this like really serious mom face. And she's like, Mary, like you're not doing a very good job like attaching. And I was like, but I don't like him. Like I don't want to attach. I don't want to attach to him. She's like, well, sweetie, you kind of have to, because like, you know, he's providing for us and he's like my husband. And I was like, do I really, really have to do this? And she's like, yeah, you kind of do. So I took a deep breath and I was like, all right, Linda, because I didn't call her mom. She didn't really want to be called mom because she's like, I'm too young to be a mom. So I always called her Linda. So I jumped off the, kind of like springboarded myself off the bed. And I remember my little feet like hitting the cool, like the, I don't know, it was like really nice, cool wood flooring. And we were watching something. I don't remember what we were watching. And commercial break had happened. And I had put my arm up like this. And a few seconds later, a cigarette hit my skin. And I just remember screaming like this guttural, almost like ungodly, like demonic scream came out of my lungs. And I was just screaming. So my mom rushed me to the hospital. And he was like, Linda, what happened? And she was like, oh no, it was accident. He's like, no, it wasn't an accident. Like this is a third degree burn. She's gonna be scarred for life. Like what the heck happened? And she kind of explained, and he was like, look, I don't know what's going on in your house, but because I delivered her, me, Mary, you and your mom, like I'm not going to report this to Child Protective Services, but this is like really serious. And if I come back, like if you come back, like this is going to be reported. So that was sort of like the initial phase of it. So a few weeks later, I'm in my room and it was summertime because like the sun hadn't gone down, but my mom had gone to work. And I disobeyed. It was my fault. I disobeyed. She was like, don't get out of bed. And I got out of bed. And I heard voices in the next room. And there was money being exchanged by 3 people. And I remember looking at the money and I was like, oh, and I remember saying like, oh, like I would really like some money. And they kind of like motioned me to come closer. And then the next minute I just remember being tied. And when I woke up, I was soaked in blood. I just remember being soaked in blood. My nightgown was drenched in blood. My hair was like, it was nighttime now. Like it was really late at night. And my hair was like, it was like sticky. It was like, it had been such a long time that I had been laying on the floor that it was actually like sticking, like my scalp was actually like stuck. And I'm like trying to like grab it, but I can't because it's like sticky, and like I'm sticky. Like there's like blood all over me, and I just remember feeling like really sticky in like this red mess. And I remember I was like, what am I gonna do? Like my nightgown that was white was now like soaked in red blood, and it was a really pretty nightgown, you know. It had like the little pretty like eyelet lace at the bottom. Like it was a really pretty nightgown, and it was just like destroyed. And so I was like, okay, like I can't let my mom see this. I'm gonna get in mad trouble. So I remember rolling it, and I shoved it under the bed, and I remember I was bleeding a lot after that because I was actually wearing sanitary napkins in my pants. I remember that. And I remember this one night they were holding me up against the wall, and they were taking lighters to my feet and just listening to me scream. I remember being half like nude, like from the top, and just like in panties, and they were like positioning me with like another girl, and they were taking photos of me with like a Polaroid camera. And I remember my mom being in the shower, and he was holding me to where I was like sitting on him, and he was just like rocking my body like back and forth. And this one day he was cleaning out the carpet from the closet, because a lot of times he used to rape me in the closet. And there were a whole bunch of adults like around me, and I was stamping my feet, and I was furious, and I was like, mommy, where's my blood? Where's my blood, mommy? Where's my blood? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I want to know where my blood is. Like, my blood is no longer on the carpet. Well, it turned out that people in the town started talking and had told my grandmother that they had a suspicion that I was being trafficked because I wasn't playing outside anymore. My mom told me that there was blood in my underwear to the point that I needed to start wearing a pad. I had incontinence problems from like the time that I could remember, to where like I remember being like 4 or 5 and I would sneeze and pee would just come out of me for no reason, and I couldn't figure out like why this was happening at school when I was a little bit older, and I would be running and I would just pee. I didn't understand. When the Ruffings had brought me to the doctor's office, they had said to her, we don't know the extent of the damage, but there is severe vaginal trauma. And we don't know to the extent of what had happened, but they said it's very obvious she's been raped. And I remember that appointment because when we were walking out, Gail had said to me, she said, there are times when I just wish I could put the word adopted on you. So my grandmother confirmed it too, because my editor was very conservative and wasn't really, familiar with any of this. And when I had to vividly describe child intercourse with her, she still didn't believe me, and she ended up confirming with my grandmother. And I remember the day that happened, I called my grandmother up and I said, hey Grams, it's me. I said, I'm just going to ask you a question, and I just want you to confirm this. I said, was I sexually trafficked? And And my grandmother, without a beat, without hesitation, just said yes. Yes, Mary was sexually trafficked.
Shit.
Yeah, that was intense. Yeah.
So what exactly about your particular situation constitutes sex trafficking versus, just molestation or sexual assault? What about your particular scenario fits into the category of being trafficked? Just so our viewers can see the different kind of facets of what being sex trafficked means.
Well, essentially, the fact that money was being exchanged throughout the town, different people were coming to the house. The fact that there were other children involved in the situation where money was being exchanged and photos were being bought, that's what made it sexual trafficking versus child rape. It's usually when there's money or drugs or something being exchanged for the act of sex versus just for the this is really hard to say, but
like just getting your rocks
off. Gratification of the sex, right. Where there's more like there's goods or something being exchanged for the sex of a child. That's what classifies it as sex trafficking. Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez. Did they investigate? Did they send police to the house?
My mom's friend reported it. And because my mother had fled, she ended up having a warrant in Henrietta, Oklahoma, and she did not return there for a very long period of time. Yeah.
So that night, where your mom went to work and told you to stay in bed, was the intention always to have what happened happen, or was it just kind of by happenstance because you came out and kind of made yourself known?
I don't know. Because I don't know if there were more circumstances that happened that I just can't remember. Or like, I remember this one time I was in a closet. It was one of those that had like the old, like kind of like, I don't know if they make them anymore, but like they're like the usually like they're the fold-in ones that have like the like the slats where you can like see through, like you can see through the closets.
Right.
And I was wearing this cute little blue jean Oshkosh Bagosh. Remember Oshkosh Bagosh? I love those little. I was wearing those little
overalls.
Yeah, little overalls that were short, And I was wearing this purple, like a really comfy purple shirt. And he was in there with me. And I was freaking out. And his sister had pulled the door open. And she said, she said, "What are you doing with Mary?" And he said, "Oh, I'm helping her get dressed." And she's like, "But she is already dressed." And she just she had this like really, she was like pudgy. She was like really cute. She was like short. She had like this really nice bun in her hair. And she's like, "Mary, do you want something to eat?" And she took me to the kitchen. And I remember the night, like, I remember this one time when my mom, she was having sex with him. Like, I remember that, and I was gonna, like, intervene, and my mom was like, she gave me this look. Like, she gave me this, like, hard, cold stare. Like, kind of like she just gave me this look, and she shook her head like really strongly, and she's like, no, don't come over here. But I remember there was like blood rushing out of her legs and stuff, and like I don't know if it was like rape or she was having sex on her cycle, like I don't know, but I just remember like she looked really terrified. But yeah, the day that we left, apparently she told me that he had attacked her, and I ended up saving her. I ended up running over to him, and I bit, and I remember this because I tasted blood in my mouth. I do remember this. When she told me, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that. I ended up biting him so hard. I actually took a chunk of skin off, and there was like blood gushing out of my little mouth, and like there was like, I'm trying to like wipe it, but it was because he was trying to attack her, and I was like, no, you can't attack my mommy. And I was just like taking my little arms and just like pounding him, and I couldn't really do much, but I just remember his arm was exposed, and I just like bit as hard as I could, and I pulled it like an animal, and there was just like all this blood, and like I was like, it was just like spurting out of his arm. And apparently she said like he ended up with like he had to get it like bandaged and like everything. Like I was like vicious when I was a little girl. Like I was a terror. Like I had this like fighter instinct in me ever since I was like knee high, you know? I remember, yeah, so that was the situation with the trafficking, but I don't know if it was happenstance, but I definitely know that they knew that they could get away with it because, like, after I had been gang raped, then there was the porn thing. So,
the porn thing?
Yeah, where they were taking nude photos of me and this other little person. I think it was another little girl, and they were forcing us to be in sexual positions with each other while they took photos. Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know who she is, and I don't really I never seen her before. But there were like all of these like little kids that were with me, and we were like forced to like touch each other like in certain places, and they had Polaroids. Yeah.
So do you think that your mother giving you up for adoption was actually saving you from the abuse that you were going through, or some kind of guilt from the sex trafficking, or was it to save her? Because it sounds like her ex-husband was abusing her as well as a fear.
Well,
it's no excuse for it at all.
I think there was an incident in San Antonio that happened, and I think she knew something more drastic than what they had told her happened, and I think that was sort of the catalyst as to why she put us up for adoption, and I'll tell you guys that story. So this one night when she was at work, there was a girl in the bathtub. Beautiful bathtub. It was like one of those that like had the kind of like the clawfoot bathtub that had like the shower thing, and then like it just kind of like wrapped around and stuff. It was like one of those really big bathtubs that you used to see in like the old houses. My uncle, her uncle, my great uncle had I'm gonna see if I can get through this story. I don't know. The story always makes me cry. He had I don't know what had happened, but he ended up taking her hair and her face, and he ended up slamming it back so many times. And she had this like massive gash. By the time I had seen her in the bathtub, there was this massive gash and like on the back of her head. She was maybe only like probably, I don't know. It's hard to say when you're little because like everybody looks so much older, right? But I don't know exactly how old she was, but she had like really pretty hair, and she was really beautiful. Like, I remember she was really, really pretty. And I was trying to get towels to stop the bleeding. I couldn't find anything to make the bleeding stop. And I was crying. I was hysterical. I was really, really hysterical. And then as I ran out the next time, she'd grabbed my wrist and she said, Mary, she's like, don't leave me. You have to stay with me, and I need you here because I'm going to go to heaven soon, and I don't want to do this journey by myself. And I remember looking at her and I said, well, if you're going to get to go to heaven, like, why can't I? Like, I don't understand. Like, why are you going to go to heaven? And she said, well, I'm dying. And she said, you can't go yet, sweetie, because you're only little. You're only 4. You can't go yet. Only old people go. And I said, okay. So I remember taking her hand and I remember praying. I just remember praying with her. And then I lost Clayton. I don't know where he was at this point. I don't know where he was. Like, in my memory, I can't find him. And then these cops, these amazing cops came in, and they were wrapping her body up in a tarp. And this one cop was dancing with me in the living room, and I had his hat on, and it was like way too big for me, and he was just like dancing with me and just really trying to distract me. And then they had pulled her out of the tub, and I guess it wrapped her up in like this black, I don't know, it wasn't like plastic, but it wasn't exactly a bag. I don't know what it was, but there was like this stretcher, and like they had raised the stretcher, they had put her in the stretcher, and then the floor in my house was uneven. When you got up to the door, it was uneven, and they kind of misstepped, and her arm had come out of the plastic, and I knew that she was dead. And I looked down at my fingernails, and they had blood, like, because I used to bite my nails, so there was like blood in between like the quicks in my skin, and my hands were all like red. I had all this blood on my hands, and I was trying furiously to like wash it, but I could not get it out from underneath my fingernail pads. So my mom had come home, and she asked them like, what's on her hands, and they said hair dye, and she said, well, I don't think that it looks like hair dye. And I remember when the cops had asked what happened, I said he killed her. I said Uncle Herman killed her. He hit her head against the thing. And then Uncle Herman, like, I had told the cops that, and then they were like, he was like, she's just a brat, like, she doesn't know what she's talking about, like, she's just a kid. I think it was that incident that had kind of was the catalyst, because I think there was some sort of thing that happened, because it was shortly after that she had surrendered, my brother and I. But we used to get really beat pretty bad living in that house. I remember, so Clayton used to get neglected a lot, and oh my gosh, like trying to fill up his, like, so they had like baby bottles for him, but they would just kind of ignore him when he was like screaming and stuff. So I came up with a system. I would get the bottle out, I'd put the bottle on the floor, and then I would dump the milk carton like into the bottle to try to get some milk to go into the bottle, and I would give that to him. And I could sometimes change his diapers, but I was like horrible when it came to like soiled diapers. And I remember going to my mom and like the other adults, and I'm like, he needs to be changed, like his diaper is like really bad, like I can't change it. And then when I did try to change it and I would get poop everywhere, like I would get beat for that. So I started running away. I would take my brother and I'd put him on my back and we would go out for these little adventures because it was safer than staying in the house. And shortly around the time that we were put up for adoption, a very nice trucker person ended up finding me by myself. I had gone onto Highway 281, or not 281, but I was living by Southwest Military Drive, and apparently I had gone too far outside of like their neighborhood. And he found me. And I didn't have a name. Like I knew my name, but I didn't know my mom's name, and I didn't know my address or anything. And he literally had to go back to the area where there was the school, and he was literally knocking on every door trying to figure out which house I had belonged to. So I think there was a catalyst for that. So yeah, that was sort of the living situation that I had, living with her uncle and her aunt. Yeah.
Did your uncle get locked up?
I don't know, but I know that he ended up dying really young of pancreatic cancer. Actually, I think he was only like 45 or 46 when he ended up dying. So he didn't live a very long life. No. All
right,
Sid, I'm gonna let you chime in. I know.
That's okay. You're good. Are you in contact with your brother?
No. So the stipulation was when I was put up for adoption on June 6th of 1992 at around 11 a.m. in the morning. I wasn't supposed to have any contact with him. That was what my parents had said. So what they had done is I had a massive family album that had like all of these pictures and stuff, and they didn't give it to me. They're like, we don't want you to have it. So I literally don't have, like, I have no pictures from the time of between the ages of 4 and 11. They took all of those pictures back. I have none. Yeah.
So you have no picture of your brother at all?
No, I don't. I know I Googled him. And I know that he's living in Florida, and I know that he's living in an assisted living house for mentally impaired adults, just because he never really was able to gain cognitive function where there was severe brain damage from abuse. Yeah.
Was he abused, sexually abused as well?
I don't ever recall him being sexually abused, but I do remember him being beaten. Like, we were both really beaten. I mean, the reports of the family when they had adopted us, they said that there were so many black and blues, they didn't know where skin had begun and bruises had started. When the agency lawyer had picked us up for temporary foster care, she had recalled that Clayton had probably been in a diaper that was probably 7 days old, and he yeah, massive neglect. He was wearing shoes that were, I believe, 2 or 3 times smaller than his actual foot, and he actually had to get special orthopedic shoes from Stride Right because his toes were starting to curl from being squished into them. I know that I didn't know anything when I came into the Ruffing family. I didn't know colors. I didn't know shapes. I didn't know my ABCs. I knew other things though. Like, I knew how to open up a can opener. I knew, like, there were like other things that I knew how to do that only adults would know how to do because I was surviving on my own. I lived off of dog food for a while, living with my biological mom, and yeah, I mean, just the things, just the things that I have, I endured as a little kid. Like, it was, I had no table manners. I was so starved, though. I was very starved because when the family had me, I couldn't keep anything down. My stomach was like non-existent. Like, my stomach was so small, like I couldn't even keep like small bits of food down. I was like even good stuff like ice cream. Like, oh my gosh. In the hotel room in San Antonio, when they adopted me the very first night, I had this like, they had like this massive king size bed. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And they had ordered a brownie, like this mega chocolate brownie with like ice cream. It was the very first time I'd ever have ice cream or I ever had a brownie. And I just remember sinking my little teeth into that succulent, it was hot and it was gooey. It was just like this, it was so good. And a few minutes after, like, I was just puking it up because my stomach just couldn't handle food. And so I was like very, very malnourished and very starved. And it took them months to finally get me to like actually eat something because I didn't feel hunger. Like, I didn't feel hunger and my stomach was so small that I couldn't even take in food. So that there were like things like that they had to like really work through as well. Yeah.
And at the time of which you were still with, your biological mother, you and your brother, were you guys ever in school at that time? Or
no, I was still too little to go to school. Like I was only 4, so I might have done. I know when I had gotten into the roughing household, they had tried doing preschool with me, and the stories that I would share about being locked in closets and stuff. My nursery school ended up thinking that it was like my adopted family. So there were cops called to my preschool and they were being investigated for child abuse. And so that was pretty hard on them. But I went through a lot of physical abuse with them as well. Shortly before they put me up for adoption, my face was cut out of photos that were around the house. I didn't have a lot of bodily control over my stomach, and so when I was sick, I would just kind of throw up everywhere, and so they would drag my body through it, drag my hair through it. When I was younger and I would tan, they would call me certain things that I'm not going to repeat because I think it's too racist, but they would call me a white and they were very racist. But I also have like Native in my genes, and so they really thought that I was like dirty. I went through like I was beaten with a board to the point that they had broken several blood vessels in my left leg. And I had gone to school, and a kid had asked me what happened. I was like, oh, I did something wrong, and like they missed my butt and hit my leg, and the school had to report that because he ended up telling the teacher. Let's see, what else did I go through? A lot of neglect, like so and kind of closer to around 3rd grade, like I didn't eat breakfast. I was on Ritalin too, so that didn't really help. So I was on speed. So, speed, like it kind of tapers off your hunger, which is basically what Ritalin is. It's basically legal speed. So I wasn't eating breakfast and I wasn't eating my lunch, and they weren't around when I was home because I was a latchkey kid. So I didn't eat dinner, so I was raiding the junk food drawer. It was like this massive, like, I don't know, maybe 18, 20-inch drawer that had like all the little Debbies and all of the snacks, and I would just like eat them, throw away the wrappers, and I wasn't sleeping at night. So I had symptoms of trauma. I just didn't talk about it. I didn't even know how to tell them the stuff that had happened to me. I think there were clues that I had gone through some stuff. Like they had caught me in my room one time and I was pretending to do porn. And I had girls that were dressed up scantily and I was taking pictures of them. And it was a replay of what I had gone through, and I would have my Barbies have sex, and just there were a lot of clues that I had been sexually abused. When I found out that they were going to have a baby, my very first question to my dad was, well, when you guys are in the shower, like, who's going to watch the new baby? There was just a lot of knowledge. Like, I had a lot of knowledge about sex that most kids my age that would have, like, in second grade, that's going to be like the very last question that like kids are going to ask. But that was like my very first question. I was terrified of abandonment. So there was that. And then when they had put me up for adoption, I was just to the point where, like, I didn't really want a family at that point. Like, I just kind of wanted to age out of the adoption agency. Like, I didn't really have this innate desire to want to be anybody's daughter at that point. Like, I didn't really get it. And my gut was right, though. My gut was right about my next family, because we were by the swimming pool at St. Jude's, and Jeannie Chase, who worked for Adoption Services Associates at the time, had asked me, and they're like, well, she asked me, like, what do you think of the Solomons? And I said, you cannot put me with this family. And she said, why? I said, okay, let's look at this. I said, the Ruffings made roughly about $350,000 a year. I said, easy. But I said, my psychiatry appointments, they said by the time I would reach 18 would be about $250,000 altogether. I said, this family doesn't even make $250,000. I said, how are they going to afford my psychiatry things? Because I said, this isn't getting reimbursed by the state. I'm saying this at 11 and a half. And I said, you can't put me in with this family. Like, they're too broke. Like, they're not going to be able to take care of me. Like, please do not do this to me. And I said, it's a money thing. And I said, if they can't afford the $10,000 to adopt me, they're not going to be able to afford to take care of me. $10,000 is not that's not a huge amount of money to adopt a kid. And if they can't afford that, like, go on to the next family. And I lost that battle because they had done their own calculations, but this is something that I didn't know. And maybe if I had had more information, maybe I would have made a different choice. Or maybe I would have convinced them to, like, advertise me on, like, billboards or something to, like, you know, the right family. But what I didn't know is that I wasn't staying at St. Jude's for free. I thought I was staying in the group home for free, but I wasn't. There was a fee that they had to pay to the group home. And they did calculations. He said, well, she has another 7.5 years left until adulthood. It's going to be over $10,000 to keep her here. It makes more financial sense to just send her to this family.
So it's a money thing for the adoption.
It was a money thing. It was a money thing for the agency, because they knew that I didn't want to be adopted by this family. And Dustin, who owns Mutiny FX in Silent Springs, Arkansas, it's a Christian multimedia. He does all the special effects for Christian movies. He owns that. He had told his parents, Jerry and Jill, I do not want Marianne in this family. He made it very crystal clear. It was also crystal clear that Jill Solomon did not want to adopt me, because before I was adopted, she said to me, she's like, you know, I don't really love you. When I first met you, I did not love you. I had to pray for God to force me to love you, but I didn't love you when I first met you.
So there was already telltale signs.
There were telltale signs that this was not going to work. Yeah.
I want to switch a little bit, because we're almost at the hour. Like, literally, this is probably like we only have an hour, but this is probably like, this is so deep that we're just here because your kids actually were illegally taken from you and adopted.
Yeah, they were.
Did you ever find your kids, or?
Yes, I did. Rachel Dilly is in Silent Springs, Arkansas. Jessie Gail Puckett is in school in Corpus Christi. I believe in Texas A&M in Corpus Christi. My parents were so so good in their manipulation, you know. So both of the girls think that I am a horrible person and think that I was a drug addict and think like the rumors on just how the stories of me just completely spun out of control, and these people never interviewed me. They never met me. They took the words of my parents who had a vendetta against me because of my homeschooling experience at face value. And so both of my daughters think that I am a complete white trash mom who just gave them up for no apparent reason. And I can't refute what they've been brainwashed to think for the last 21, 22 years. So yeah. Cult abuse is real, you know, cult abuse is real. I don't think that we understand it as a culture, as like how deep and far and wide the lies of cult abuse can go, but it's not one of those things that just sort of dissipates. And it's tragic because I lost an entire family on top of all of that as well. And I wasn't really prepared for the emotional fallout of that either. And the fact that I could never be forgiven and never loved. And then the comments that guys make towards that is just unbelievable. And so trying to navigate relationships and trying to figure out like how the world sees me through that has been really, really challenging. I mean, we think that abortion shame is bad. When you tell someone that, you know, you've had kids kidnapped through illegal adoption, their very first response is like, well, you must have done something horrible. It must have been your fault. That you must have done something. And it's deplorable. It really is deplorable. So yeah, there was that. So yeah. Yeah.
And just really quick, because yeah, we got deep into things. What type of abuse did you suffer in your relationship that you had briefly mentioned earlier? Just a brief synopsis of how that went down.
So I ended up with a child out of rape, which was very, very hard to. That was a messy thing I had to navigate myself, and I don't know if I mastered that very well, to be honest with you. I tried to co-parent with my rapist, and I tried to, the person that tried to murder me, like I tried to be a parent. I tried to make his life normal, my son's life normal. But my youngest son. But I think you can't bargain with evil, and you can't put yourself in danger to try and make it something that it's not. And it was when he choked me to the point that I lost consciousness. I actually woke up from that and I asked him, I said, what would you have done if you had actually killed me in that moment? And I said, this is why I can't stay here, because I said, I don't want the consequences of my murder to be on your hands. And I said, I don't want our son to have the stigma of you murdering me, but I can't stay here. And I said, it's hard enough trying to find a placement with one person, let alone a child. You want a parent. You want a parent. You're a good parent. You have issues when it comes to women. You have issues when it comes to being a partner, but I give you credit. You are a good dad. I can't parent properly a child that has come from rape. I can't do it because I don't ever want to be upset and say, you're a consequence of rape. It's too hard of a label for a kid to carry. And, you know, as best as we try to not say things that we don't mean when we're angry, I had already gone through a lot of verbal abuse, and parents say things that they do not mean when they are upset, but there are certain things that kids can't know. And my son doesn't know that he is a product of rape. He thinks that I'm the bad guy, that I left his dad and that I abandoned him, and I'm okay with that truth, because you can overcome that truth because there's no identity attached to that. But when you tell a child that they've come from rape, they have an identity attached to the fact that they came out of a crime. And it's challenging enough to deal with, you know, you can deal with your mom abandoning you because that happens a lot and your friends have gone through it, and it's not life altering. That you never wash off the shame of being a product of rape. And so I made the decision when he had falsified court documents saying that he was sending me pictures and he just wanted to get my address for vile reasons. I told him, I said, I'm not going to co-parent with you. I said, you have to apologize to my current husband for putting me through that. You have to tell our son the truth. And I said, and I want a written apology, because otherwise the next time you do this, I'm going to call the cops on you and you're going to be arrested. And he never did any of those things. And so I think he is smart enough now to know that there are certain things that he cannot do because he will be arrested. And so and I told my husband, I told my husband Brandon, I was like, if he's ever charged with rape, domestic violence, where it actually goes to a court of law in Middlesex, London, I will be there. I don't care if I have to beg or borrow that money. Like, I will attend that courthouse. You know, I think that men can sometimes be serious abusers, but he did tell me when I left, he was like, I can never be in another relationship. He's like, you're right. Like, I have murderous tendencies towards women. And he's like, I will remain a bachelor for the rest of my life. He's like, I will parent, but he's like, I will never be able to get married.
So is your son with him or you right now?
He's with him. I could not get custody because they said that in order for me to get custody, I would have to do all of the court proceedings in London, Ontario. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that, because his name is very famous in Ontario. His last name is McGuinty. And we had a governor that was also a McGuinty related to him. And so I knew that because when his ex had tried to press rape charges on him, they let him go because of his last name. And so I knew that there was no point in trying to fight for something that I just was not going to win. And I was just like, it's pointless. Like, his ex had charged him with stuff. I was trying to charge him with stuff, and nothing has really stuck because he is a McGuinty.
I wonder if something happened to him for him to be that way. Something.
You know, it's really interesting because his dad is really normal. I love his dad to death. When I left him, you know, I talked to his dad and I talked to his relatives in North Bay, and I told them the situation, and I said, I actually got his family's permission to leave. I said, do I have permission to leave? I said, this is what's going on. I said, do I have permission to leave? Because I don't want to hurt any of you. Like, do I have permission to leave? And they said, yep, Elizabeth, you have our permission. You have our blessing. Like, go and live your life. Like, you have our permission to leave. And whatever decisions that you make in regards to your son, we completely support you. And his mom, he was psychotic from a very young age. He at the age of like 4, you know, he was trying I think it was like either 4, 5, or 6. He was trying to push his mom down the stairs to try to murder her. He was just, I don't want to sound like anti Christian doctrine. Like I don't want to go against like Christian doctrine, but I think that there are people that are just susceptible to evil at a very young age.
I agree.
I don't know if I would say that kids are I would never say that a child is born evil, but I think that they are very susceptible to demonic influence at a very, very, very young age. And I think that's just the case with him. There was nothing in his past that I would have been like, oh yeah, like that would have turned you to be like a complete psychopath. He had you know, he is definitely a psychopath. And you know, it was very, very hard to get out from under that, and trying to keep a human soul unscathed from all of that was very trying and very difficult. And I'm happy because my son doesn't know the difference, because there aren't any women in his life, so he's not experiencing abuse. And I don't think that I would have been able, with having a book out there, I wouldn't have been able to keep that truth from him. And so he's kind of, I always made it a vow that none of my kids would ever know trauma the way that I knew trauma. And I've kept my kids in these little tiny bubbles. And sometimes that made me the villain, but I was okay with that, because as long as they had the best life possible with as few labels as I could give them, I was okay with that. My other son, Scott, he's an amazing joy. And, you know, we've had very long talks about my past, and it was really crazy because it wasn't until he was 17 that he actually knew that I had gone through all of this. And he's like, Mom, you made my childhood so magical. Like, how did you do that? And I said, because I only told you the good parts of my childhood because I wanted you to have the most magical childhood that you could ever have. And I said, I didn't want any of my darkness to fall on you because I love you that much. And I mean, there's been some hard conversations with him as far as like mental health. And a few years ago when I was suicidal for 4 years straight and really had a plan for 4 years to end my life every single night, he didn't understand that, and I had to explain that to him. And you know, he knows more now since he's read the book. And I think that he's done really well for himself because I kept that magic part of him alive. And I think as parents, that is our biggest job. You know, it may not necessarily be the perfect choice, but I think as long as we keep the evil away from our children, whether it's labels, whether it's people, whatever the case may be, then I think it's a success. And both of my children have amazing childhoods because they didn't know anything. So yeah.
I agree. And we are, oh my gosh, I
can't
believe an hour is here. So we're gonna let Sid do the plugs, and then I will come back with the advice. We'll do one because we have to wrap it up. But whew.
All right, so Elizabeth, we call this part shameless plug. You have your nice tag running along the bottom here, so just let the viewers know direct them to where they can contact you, utilize your services, or traffic to anything, projects you have, or where you're just trying to draw traffic.
Yeah, for sure. So my Facebook is always a great place to find me, is Elizabeth Somboun. And I do copy and editing and writing for coaches or for small business owners. I also write biographies for people that are just, struggling with their biography. You can find my book, Elevators of My Life, on Amazon, all over the world. Actually, it has gone international, actually, so that's really cool. So yeah, you can find it anywhere where Amazon is located. So yeah, that's where you can find me for sure.
Awesome. So really quick, can you give the biggest thing that you think will help someone going through the childhood traumas into adult traumas and everything that you have been through? Can you give the audience one thing that could help them from your life experience?
I think that you have purpose you don't need to earn your purpose in this world. You have purpose because you have a heartbeat. And I think when you really understand that, it changes your whole perspective, because you realize like nothing has to be perfect, because it is in the mess that we find purpose, and that God always uses the broken spaces to reflect the most light, and that your purpose is your heartbeat. And as long as you have a heartbeat, you have a purpose, and it doesn't really matter what you go through in life, because there's always good that can come out of the darkest shadows. Yeah.
That was deep. And so we're at time. We want to thank Elizabeth Somboun for coming. And I said that right? But I said it wrong.
Somboun.
Yeah, you got it.
I said it wrong, and I got it because listen, and I kept practicing it, but you have me so tongue twisted right now. I'm not even going to be funny. Like you just shocked me with your testimony, like the things that happened to kids starting as a child and going into adulthood. I think a lot of people overlook it. But the fact that there was all of those adults in the home and they didn't stop the traumas that you went through, and illegally taking kids and adopting them and putting you through adoption and foster homes, and you're put in the same situation of abuse throughout your childhood and into adulthood. You know, we have to be mindful of that, and we need to bring a lot of awareness to it. So I'm thankful that you were able to share your testimony.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I so appreciated it. Thank you.
My pleasure. And Elizabeth got nervous the first time again, but she came back and she made it through. And we have hit Canada, so it is a blessing. But just to let everyone know, we're going to sum up. Elizabeth, there's purpose. As long as your heart is beating, which means that you wake up every morning, you have purpose to overcome. And a lot of us are going through things and we suppress it, but you have purpose in life. And again, facing your traumas from childhood to adulthood, and it brings mental health issues. And the only way to heal from that is to face your traumas and to acknowledge it. You don't have to share it publicly like us, but as long as you're acknowledging it and you're addressing your traumas, and this is the purpose of why we share what we share, in hopes that someone will connect with the life experiences that we are sharing so that you can start the journey to healing. So just know you have a purpose in life as long as you're waking up. And that should help you on to start on the way to the journey of healing. And we want to thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken, where we're going to continue to bring life experiences.